The following program deals with a controversial subject. The theories expressed are not the only possible interpretation. Viewers are invited to make a judgment based on all available information.
This is your captain speaking. We are beginning our descent into madness.
Open your mind.
And we are back to another edition of West of the Rockies. I'm Frank. Thank you guys for sticking around. I know it's late for some of you, but we got another exciting show lineup for everyone tonight. Genevieve, how you doing over there?
I'm doing quite all right.
Doing good?
I'm doing well. Definitely.
Yeah. Considering it's been a crazy week, I'll say that much. It's I don't think we can start the show without briefly at least addressing the unfortunate events that have transpired in the last week. To me, it's just really interesting. And, on this show, we talk a lot about these fringe topics, whether it's the paranormal, aliens, UFOs, conspiracy, etc. Last weekend, as many people know across the country, there was that huge UFO scare. It turned out to be a test launch for a missile. For me, it wasn't a question whether it was a UFO or not, or a missile or not. To me, the real question was why. Why is this happening right now? And 2 days later, there was another missile test. And a few days later, we had, the airstrike that killed that
and a
prominent...
few days before that, you had apparently the leader of ISIS getting destroyed. I don't know what to say.
And then days later, we had the unfortunate events that happened in Paris. And look, I love Paris. I love France. It's an amazing place. There's something very magical, and I can understand why that is the capital or is the capital of art to some extent, right? So many great artists have lived there. And obviously, it saddens me and it saddens us to see this kind of thing happen. And our thoughts and prayers are with all those affected. But for me, the real question is always why, and I've been trying to think, and I by no means, take my word on this. I'm just a mere mortal trying to make sense of really crazy situations. But I've been sitting around wondering if these three events are somehow connected. And that's all I'm going to say, because I really have nothing more to say about it. Like I said, I'm still
exploring this next week. But...
Maybe we'll be exploring this next week. But I just find it interesting that we have, like a missile test launch, and then we have that airstrike that killed, what was his name?
There's a lot more. You had the more Lebanese attacks. You had a lot at once. There was a lot at once.
There's a lot. There's definitely a lot going on, a lot for my brain to digest and try to make sense of. And I think I'm on the same boat as many of the people listening. We're just trying to make sense of all the craziness in this world. And boy, 2015 is going down as a pretty intense year. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, on a lighter note, thinking of 2015, I realized that 2015 marked the 30 years of Back to the Future, which is also an important date for me.
Did you see Toyota's new advert?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
It's oh gosh, let's not talk about it.
And it also marked 40 years since Travis Walton had that experience up in Snowflake, Arizona, in the mountains. 40 years, yeah.
40.
Yeah, so 2015, it's interesting. Like I said, for me, it's interesting. I'm not saying, don't believe me and think that I'm saying that, it's a big, I'm not into numerology or nothing. I don't know a whole lot about it. But Genevieve, I'm going to throw it to you, because tonight we have a really cool guest with a really cool movie, and I'm really, really excited to talk to him. So why don't you make the introduction and we'll get him on the line.
All right, well, we've got Patrick Kennelly on today. He works in film, video, theater, performance, and the visual arts. A man of many talents. He's got experience in writing, producing, directing, designing, editing, performing, and curating. Receiving his BFA in film, video at Cal Arts and his MFA in theater direction at UCLA, Patrick is now co-artistic director at Highways Performance Space. I believe that's the one here in Santa Monica. And he's also on the board of directors. He's furthermore the founder and producer of Unmarked, UNMA Rked. I'm not just spelling that out randomly. It's written that way in capital letters.
Of course.
It's a project dedicated to live and remote outer-disciplinary spectacle, horror, glamour, and social justice. You see that a lot in Patrick's work. You know, he works on multiple platforms. And as will become apparent to those of you who don't already know, he's a big fan of exploring issues of social, cultural, and personal identity and subjectivity. Now, the recently released Excess Flesh marks a directorial debut for Patrick in the feature film world, premiering at South by Southwest in March of this year. Past works include Patty, which was a multi-platform project that recently actually received 5 LA Weekly Theatre Award nominations, including Best Musical. Others include an experimental short-form documentary titled 10 Minutes is 2 Hours, shot in South Sudan, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
And another one, some of you may have heard of this, was a recent project, a very cool sub-pop music video for the single Body and Blood by LA rap group Clipping. Well, with that, basically, we'd like to introduce Patrick Kennelly onto our show.
But first,
But before that, just so you all get a view of what we're talking about, we're going to play the theatrical trailer of Excess Flesh.
yeah,
Here
this
we
is
go.
for all our Ustream friends. And if you're listening on iHeart,
You're
don't
missing
worry,
out. Tune in.
Yeah, you're missing out, number one. But we'll also be linking this later. We're posting it on Twitter as well. But right now, let's check this out. Believe me, it's a trip. Here we go.
And with that, we'd love to introduce Patrick onto Western Rockies. Hi.
Hello,
Hey, Patrick, can you hear us all right?
I can't.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time for being with us. We're really excited to talk to you. I mean, this movie looks pretty intense. I'll say that much.
Definitely.
But, first, before we get into it, why don't we let our listeners get to know you a little better? How did you get involved making films? Was there like a single film that made you go like, wow, like that's the kind of stuff I want to do? Or was this something that you found yourself being led to? Because I know you work through other mediums as well.
I mean, I've always wanted to do film. I've always, since I was, really little. For me, with the most important thing, or the thing I'm most interested in is storytelling, and I've explored that in many different forms. And I think, the way media and these things have sort of developed over the years, there's so many different ways of doing it, and ways that I feel that I can add to beyond just being a film director or just being a theater director or these things, but finding different sort of unexpected connections and convergences. But yeah, so, I've done theater, I've done, performance art, I've done film, visual art, many, many different things.
Do you have a favorite, or do you find yourself feeling equally comfortable in all of these?
No, I don't feel comfortable in any of them. But that's what's most exciting to me. It's a challenge. I mean, filmmaking, I think, is the ultimate, form of storytelling and of, the convergence of all of the different sort of artistic mediums. And so that's the one I'm most excited about. And still, I'm really of the old school of, a 2 hour, a 3-act drama or something like that that's told in 2 hours instead of this, endless continuation of plot that goes on and on
Right.
over years and whatnot, which it seems to be more and more where things are progressing. People are more and more interested in these open-ended sort of narratives, but I really do like the closed sort of form of film.
And with this movie, Excess Flesh, you're tackling a topic that, at least specifically in LA, I see a lot, and I can understand how LA influenced you to write this movie and make this movie. Can you tell me a little bit about what was it in LA that inspired you both negative and positive, to come up with this idea for a movie?
Well, I mean, I'm not originally from Los Angeles. I've been here about 13 years. I'm originally from the Chicago area. And, over the last couple of years, I was starting to, feel a lot of anxiety and a lot of feeling more and more this sort of isolation that, sort of,
so just LA, basically.
Because it's such a big, sprawling sort of city of many cities. When I've been traveling around a lot in Europe and whatnot with this film, and everybody is, what is Los Angeles? And I can really never define that. I think it's, it's a lot easier to find a place like New York or,
Definitely, yeah.
But with Los Angeles, it's so unknown.
It's so fragmented, I find. I mean, coming from someone who's literally been here for like a year, I agree with you. These other places, you can pinpoint what it is that makes them, that gives them character. Like I go to London, everything is dense and it's all there in one place. And LA, it's really like just itty bitty, you can't pinpoint where and what LA is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with it. And also because the majority of the population here are people who've come from all these different, parts of the world in pursuit of something, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So it's very, to me, I mean, it's very hard to, find a way around and so you end up getting sort of pulled into your own, individual space, both like physically and psychologically.
Yeah.
And in a way that's kind of what was being reflected through this movie, amongst many other things, but that was the prime sort of, impetus for doing this at this point in time.
I find that really interesting because in LA, it's like a huge place, but at the same time, there is this anonymity about people here. You really never get to know people here sometimes.
You
and
wouldn't
that could
say
be
hi to someone on the street, put it that way.
Yeah, and that is almost a little scary because I don't know who my neighbor is necessarily. And
I literally don't know.
Yeah.
So.
So I find that the aspect of feeling isolated in such a huge place like LA really interesting, and that is something that I think a lot of people can relate. I'm guessing that this is how you felt, or am I making a wrong assumption? And if so, I apologize, but is this how you felt when you came to LA?
Oh yeah, I mean, and I've been here for 13 years and I still have no idea where I am. So it's and I've lived all around the city in different areas, and each one has its own particular sort of feeling about this, and and I still feel that way, but at the same time it's quite exciting in that way,
right?
That you never are comfortable, so to speak, and that's I mean, I was just in New York and recently, and was feeling very just caged in a completely different sort of way. Here it's you're in your own headspace, and in New York it's a much more physical entrapment.
Now with this movie Excess Flesh, we just watched the trailer, and I know that our friends on iHeart probably listened to the trailer, but why don't you tell people what Excess Flesh is about in your own words?
Well, Excess Flesh is a story of two young women. They're in their late 20s. They're roommates, and one of them works in the fashion industry, is very beautiful, very thin, and the other one is new to the city. She's from New York, actually, and is sort of an agoraphobe in a way. Is very and they're roommates, and envious and jealous of this other roommate who works in the fashion industry and is beautiful, outgoing, brings a different man to the house every night, that tension in the relationships starts to build, and eventually, not to give too much away, but the one entraps the other one inside of the apartment, and it sort of spirals out of control from there.
And it's crazy because we research a lot of topics for this show and a lot of stuff that can be quite disturbing and scary. And watching the trailer and watching those scenes where, you know, the girl that is trapped inside the apartment, it really triggers in me like this strange reaction, because I'm always quite weary of people that go missing and then they turn out that they're being held hostage. And I remember, just to kind of get an idea of how common this thing is, I just Googled, you know, women kept captive, and I literally got four stories just from this year alone of women that had been held captive against their will by everyone from jealous boyfriends to unknown men that just decided to do this. And it's really scary, you know, every time I see movies that deal with that type of thing, or like human trafficking or things like that, where people are just literally held against their will. How challenging was shooting a movie where that is the somewhat of the center point, if not the center point of the story?
Well, I think the actual entrapment, you know, was again sort of a dramatization or a physicalization of these ideas. About, you know, being in Los Angeles and you know, your own private space is becoming your own, you know, worst enemy. Right. And also that this thing with roommates and with this other, you know, whether it's the, you know, the person you see in the mirror who's not necessarily the person you really are, or that other person that you live with, that you sort of project yourself onto. You know, I mean, that's been my experience with, you know, having a lot of roommates over time. I've never really felt comfortable with another person in the same sort of space as me. You know, all I can do is see the worst in myself in this other person. Wow. But I think that's a normal thing. You know, it's we all want to we all want that privacy, you know. Right. And by sharing this space with another person, it's this real invasion of that. And that's not even just a roommate. That could be a partner or a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whoever. Right. And so the idea of being entrapped literally by another person, you know, whoever that may be, is, I think probably one of the most terrifying things. I mean, you hear these stories of these, you know, these people, children, women, even men, you know, who are caged up in, you know, a basement for decades. And having to create one's own, a new world, you know, literally within one's own mind, you know, to be able to survive that.
It's a very, very heavy theme, and you actually got a couple.
Right there.
You definitely got some really heavy themes going in this movie. Another one being the issue with body image or self-image. I traveled a bit, and I see that in the U.S., especially in L.A., we're quite obsessed with image, you know. I mean, we have tons of plastic surgeons here, everything from like reconstructive dentistry to you name it. LA is one of the places where you can come and literally leave looking totally different. I know you've been traveling to different countries with this film, showing it at different festivals. Do you find that this translates well to these other markets, or do you find that maybe this is something a little more niche that maybe here in the U.S. we can kind of sink our teeth into more because we're more in it, so to speak?
Actually, I think it's more fascinating to people outside of it, you know, particularly in Europe. That, you know, they have I mean, I think that a lot of the themes in this are, you know, all-encompassing, global. But it's a particular thing with American culture that is of great fascination to people in other parts of the world about what that's about. I mean, there's almost it's like with a lot of pop culture that we take for granted, and in other areas, particularly in Europe, France, and Spain, and whatnot, is it has a whole different meaning, to them. And like who are the great sort of cultural I don't even know what to call them. I'm thinking about the Kardashians and the Jenners,
right?
Who aren't really human beings anymore.
True.
Or maybe they never were. I don't know. They've transformed, literally physically into these dolls. These things that can, people can project onto and also envy and that's such a huge. I feel that's such a huge thing now in culture. Is this idea of envy and these people that we can both love and hate so much, and because they're not real, they're just not real.
Yeah, it's like an illusion, pretty much. Yeah, they're living in an illusion or a fantasy of some sort.
I was going to ask, we heard that Sigrid Gilmer wrote Excess Flesh with you, but as a guy, what was it like approaching, at least such stereotypically female-centric themes? Do you think it was different for a man to write this?
No, I went into it looking at it from my own, perspective. I think that these issues aren't relegated specifically to women. Actually, statistically, men suffer more from body dysmorphia than women do. But yeah, having a co-writer who's a woman and, being able to, and working with a lot of female collaborators on this, actually the majority of the people that worked on this film were women, was really helpful for me in getting a better understanding of particular things that, I may not know directly about, or have a direct, experience with, but that's what's most exciting to me about doing work is the process of discovery and learning about myself by means outside of myself. Otherwise I wouldn't do it. I've never gone into doing work with the idea of, I have a story to tell, so to speak, or a personal narrative. That generally comes about through third-party means. So that was what this was in a way. It took a pretty far into the process for me to really understand why I was doing this particular piece or why I was interested in it.
Okay. So how do you feel about, this movie being labeled a body horror movie or a body image horror? Is that a genre you were aiming for? What were you working with while writing and filming?
I think this new body image horror thing is quite interesting. I never really perceived this as a body horror movie, and because that to me is like David Cronenberg and these types of things, which this movie really isn't. But where it started actually was investigation of two different genres that I find very offensive. That being romantic comedies and also this quote unquote torture porn. That's become very popular in recent years. And trying to get to the roots of what these particular things were about. Actually, that's where it started, really. This investigation of these genres.
Okay, so is it fair to say you weren't aiming to make a horror movie at all?
That's right.
Wow.
That's
interesting.
It's super interesting to think that a process, this long process, leads you to something that really wasn't in your mind?
I mean, I hope I don't sound like I'm looking too much into this, but it's almost like that's the scary part, the fact that it's not meant to be a horror movie,
and the
but
fact
the
that
issues,
people, conceive it as a horror
because of
movie.
the issues and the themes that it deals with, they call it a horror movie. That's honestly that's actually even scarier. Let me ask you something, Patrick. Right now, in the age we live in, obviously bullying and fat shaming have become like really big issues. Were you at any time worried while making the movie that maybe the message could get lost, or that maybe you guys were taking it too far? Was there any concerns during the production that the message could be misinterpreted?
No, not really. I can't really think about that so much and the reaction to this movie has been so extreme on either side of that, because ultimately people are just going to project their own neuroses onto no matter what. So if I start thinking in that way, then I'm setting myself up for a failure. But yeah, I mean, it's become much more acute, since we began the process of making this movie. It really bothers people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen the trailer, and it definitely makes me feel uncomfortable, because I think we've all been judged to some extent, especially, again, like I said, living in LA. There's a reason why I do a radio show, because, I don't want to be in front of a camera all the time. It's a very, very realistic issue that this movie tackles, and I find that is what makes people uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. And we've got a few questions lined up as well in the chat. One of them actually relates to one that I had. First of all, Professor Madness in the chat was asking what day, and this is regarding, filming, what day smelt the worst and why? And that's related to my question, which was, what was the most disgusting scene for you personally?
Well, the whole movie was quite disgusting to make, because I generally like to create circumstances on the productions that I do that replicate the real life, what that would be. So that's we put down real trash on the set, and shovel it up at the end of the night in the bags, and then put it back out the next day.
Oh wow!
So by the end of 18 days or whatever, how long the shoot was, it smelled quite pungent, and not in a good way.
Well, if you need a filming location, you could use my apartment. That place is filthy. Believe me, you don't need to add any more trash to it.
Yeah, we did because it was so. The apartment became so trashed. We actually had to build it. It was a set that we built.
Oh wow!
Yeah, nobody would have allowed us to do what we did.
Yeah, trash somebody's apartment. I was going to ask, how was that, trashing, an apartment? Did you get the security deposit back by any chance? But so you built a whole set.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is pretty wild. Again, this is a pretty serious, like I said, and hopefully, and stop me at any time if you feel I'm misrepresenting your film at any point. But I feel like it's a very, there's some heavy themes going on. What was the energy around the set? How, were the actors, really submerged in their characters, and was there like a tension? How was it? Or did everybody remember it was just a movie?
Well, the process that I go on with actors is, pretty deep into it, and generally I don't have problems with actors. The problems I have with other people on the crew who look at me like, what are we doing, here, wearing gas, masks and all this stuff. And the actors and the performers really love it because it's creating, a world that they can really inhabit and live in and embody those circumstances. And that was my number one goal with this work was performance and to get really inside of the physical lives and the mental lives of these characters, and everything else was less important for me. A lot of people, filmmakers, there's this right now. It's really just about effects. and I'm not talking about like visual effects, but, movie making as, a series of effects. And to me, this was really about the characters and the performance of it. It was a performance art piece in a way before the camera. And that was really exciting to me to be able to watch that and to have that, connection with the performers. But everybody knows we're making a movie at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, in Los Angeles, it's harder to push things, in the ways that I want to push than in other places, I believe, just because here it's an industry and people are less. This is being general, but less up for experimentation in these forms because this is their livelihoods, right? It's different, I guess.
Let me ask you something, because it obviously takes a village to make a movie. And you had a lot of talented people around you helping you make this thing happen. One of them, as I was going through the website, which I encourage people to check out, Excess Flesh Movie, all spelled correctly, all together. excessfleshmovie.com. Opening a new browser there, folks, and you can check that out as we talk about this. But I noticed that in the credits, you have a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Snipes doing the sound and music. And I was reading a bit about him, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that amongst his credits, it's the documentary Room 237, which I watch. I mean, I'm a huge Stanley Kubrick fan, so I've watched that more times than I care to admit. But how did he get involved in this project?
I've been working with him for about a decade now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I went to school with him, actually.
Very cool.
Yeah, we were in grad school together. I was at UCLA doing a master's in theater directing, and he was there doing a master's in sound design, actually, for theater.
Oh, wow.
And so we've done a lot of different types of projects. I've done videos for his different music projects, including clipping, which you mentioned in the intro. And he's done sound design and music for pretty much all of my theatrical works. He did the musical Patty. He did he's done everything.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
No,
That's impressive.
So it wasn't like I watched Room 237 and I
decided to grab him, call him up.
But those guys, he's amazing, and his collaborator on Room 237, William Hudson, who's also in clipping. Both of those guys are in the clipping group. I've worked with both of them in a number of different contexts.
Oh, that's really cool. No, that, like I said, that's I quite enjoyed that documentary, Room 237. I highly recommend people check it out if they haven't.
I have actually a little side note question. But on the Excess Flesh movie website, you quote Samuel Beckett's The Unnameable, I believe, with "I can't go on, I'll go on." What significance does this have, to you and to the movie?
Well, I think there's a lot of investigation in this movie of mental illness in a way, and with this idea of the mind, the mind and the sort of desolation, of the mind and its projection into real life space. This feeling of always being at the end, so to speak, and wanting to, go beyond that, in a way. So that there's a lot of that going on in this movie. The thing that I have to be very, maybe I'm sounding a little bit cryptic about it, is that there's reveals in this movie that give a little bit more, explain that a little bit better. But if I reveal those, then it ruins the movie.
Okay. So we won't ask too much about that then. Briefly, before we go into our break, we'd like to ask you about the event you organized here in LA. It was called Excess and was set to coincide with the premiere here of Excess Flesh. Could you tell us a little about that and, how it developed and became part of this, whole creation?
Yeah, I've put on a number of these types of events over the years, just in my interest in, happenings, where you bring together a lot of different artists and, ideas and kind of collide them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, bringing together an excessive amount of ideas and, literal people in a space. We had 13 musical acts.
Mm-hmm.
And all these performance installations is what I call them. And these are all happening at the same time. And then I thought I had been wanting to do another one of these, and it just kind of coincided well to tie it into the Los Angeles premiere of Excess Flesh, which is a genre horror movie that deals with real life horrors in a way, and so it just it makes sense to do this at Halloween around that time, and to kind of do a deconstruction of the Christian hell houses, and have music happening all around it.
No, that's really good, and we'd love to talk about that more, but we're gonna wait until after the break, because now we've mentioned clipping a few times now, and you directed one of their recent music videos. What was it? Body and Blood, or the other way around? Or did I get that wrong?
Body and Blood.
Okay. So we're going to play that for everyone on Ustream, have a quick musical break, and then we'll be back talking about that and other projects.
Yeah. So, Patrick, if you'd be so kind, just hang on the line for us just a few minutes. And, yeah, we're going to check out this track. I actually got the pleasure of listening to it early, and it's not just visually striking, but also musically. It's a really great track. So
all around engrossing. Stick
around. We still got another hour coming up of West of the Rockies. We're here with Patrick, director of this really crazy movie called Excess Flesh. We're going to throw it to the video. If you're not on our Ustream channel, I urge you to go. If not, you can still enjoy it because the music's pretty cool on this. So here we go. West of the Rockies coming right back in just a few, right here on the Independent FM. Enjoy.
What's up, guys? This is Jorge Diaz of Paranormal Activity, The Marked Ones, and you're listening to West of the Rockies with Frank. This portion of the show is sponsored by Haunted Orange County, your premier source for all things haunted in and around OC. From haunted history ghost walks to ghost group hunting expeditions at some of SoCal's most haunted destinations. Make your fall plans early and book an upcoming tour or investigation today. Visit HauntedOC.com.
And we are back to the second hour of West of the Rockies. I'm Frank. Thank you guys for sticking around. I know it's late, but we're having a lot of fun here. Genevieve, how you doing over there?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Having a lot of fun.
Yeah, you enjoying yourself?
Yes.
Awesome.
I mean, what better topic than horror, right? To make someone
one
smile.
One of my favorites. One of my favorites. As always, I'm Engineer Frank on Twitter, West of the Rockies on Facebook. You can follow the show on Twitter at WOTR Radio. And check out the website, WOTRradio.com. You will find some really cool interviews, some really cool blog posts. We just posted the interview with Steve Concatelli, executive producer of the Out of Time documentary, where they restore the DeLorean time machine.
Yeah, that was
On that
cool.
same episode is when we talked to Ben Hansen about the missile launch and the Travis Walton Skyfire Summit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really interesting interview. Definitely check that out. We also have new blog posts. We got our Kamikaze blog post.
I still think our little catacombs
and the
was
catacombs
a nice one.
The catacombs is a great one. It's honestly you did an excellent job at giving it a different spin. I'm a fan of the more morbid side of them, but you found that the poetry inside the catacombs,
I
it's
mean, the quotes were nice. They were grim
impressive,
and heavy and good.
No, it's good stuff. So definitely check it out. WOTRradio.com is the website. You can find Genevieve on Twitter at Genevieve Uway on Twitter.
Not a day I go by that I don't regret choosing that name. But
there's still time. There's still time. And of course, you can catch her on her very own show right here on the Independent FM every Thursday night at 9 p.m. called No Added Flavors, OURS. Because if you haven't picked up by her accent, she's not from around here.
I spell it all wrong.
Music, jokes,
whatever.
facts, funny stuff, taking requests as well. So definitely check it out. No Added Flavors on Twitter as well, at noaddedflavors.com. We're joined tonight by Patrick Kennelly, who is the director of this really, really interesting, unwillingly horror movie called Excess Flesh. Patrick, why don't you tell people where they can find you on social media and find more info about this film?
I think you gave out the website for the film before. It's www.excessfleshmovie.com. And we're on Facebook as well, if you and Twitter. I don't know I'm really, really bad with all that stuff.
It's all good. You're talking to somebody that forgets their password for every account on a daily
Twitter
basis.
Was at Excess Flesh, and I believe the Facebook was Excess Flesh Movie.
Excess Flesh Movie.
Yes.
There we go.
I was really surprised when I came up with that title that there wasn't all those names and whatnot weren't taken already.
I know.
I thought that too. I was like, well done for picking.
Yeah, kudos for that.
Yeah,
no, because believe me, in this day and age where people literally just get names and hope that one day somebody will come up needing it and having to pay for it.
Business.
Yeah, it's become a business. I actually knew a guy who bought, I think, something like 50 or 60 websites, literally, and they were like very generic websites. They're like, oh, I'm sure somebody will,
Website.com. Oh,
yeah,
crap,
exactly,
I haven't
stuff
checked
like
it yet.
that. Patrick, before we went to break, we were talking about this Hell House that you had set up to coincide with the LA premiere of your movie, and we're in the middle of talking about that. Now, listen, me personally, I had never heard of a Hell House. Maybe I've been living under a rock. But can you tell us a little bit about the concept of what a Hell House is and how you took that concept and applied it to what you wanted to do with the premiere of your movie?
Well, a Hell House is generally put up by Christian churches. There's actually a really excellent documentary about it called Hell House.
Oh.
That and basically it's in the form of a typical haunted house where people walk through a series of rooms, but in the rooms, instead of I don't know, Jason coming out with a knife or whatever, or different scenarios like that, you have scenes depicting abortion and teen suicide and all these, gay marriage, all of the sort of their ills of society, so to speak. And basically, to scare you straight. And then you end up in basically hell, like in the, I've never actually been in one of these things before. I don't think I could ever put my.
I desperately want to know.
But they're quite advanced now. I mean, it's a relatively recent phenomenon.
Oh, okay.
But they're just as they're almost as prevalent now as regular haunted houses. Not in Los Angeles or
right,
but in the areas of our country where
the Bible Belt and all that, I'm sure.
Yes, yeah.
There was the great article on Vice actually where a guy literally took you through the experience of a Hell House under the guise of volunteering there, and he wrote a pretty interesting first.
It sounds like
there's
an interesting way of thinking that goes behind these things. I'll say that much. Patrick, I was reading that the Daily Beast, and I'm going to quote this story. They called your movie, and I quote, the most messed up movie at South by Southwest. Was that something that you were striving for there, or was this just part of like the whole, it wasn't meant to be a horror movie, but that's how people interpret it?
Yeah, I mean, I always think I'm doing quite mainstream and accessible works, but I guess it never really turns out that way. Yeah, it's I'm reminded numerous times, especially when I go on festivals and whatnot, festival programmers and whatnot, they come to me and they're like, you're the weird movie. I'm like, I don't really know what that means,
That's
but
gotta be a compliment.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I think of weird movies, I think the Human Centipede or something along those lines, or like a Serbian film. But I feel like your movie, you're trying to get to deeper issues, and I was reading some of the stuff online about what you've said, in relation to this film, that it's almost like a criticism to the consumeristic society that we live in. Could you tell me a little bit more about that and how you see it in that way?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the things with this movie, I think that's made people uncomfortable is the style of it is really up in your face. Mm-hmm. And to me, that is a reflection of the culture, at least from my point of view. Mm-hmm. That is quite inescapable. I mean, where you are in Los Angeles, it's driving up and down everywhere. You just can't escape. Advertisements and images and things just being blasted in your face at all times at a very high volume. Reality television, it's just more and more content endlessly. It's just there is no space for reflection and thought.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to dig a pretty deep hole to get to that place. So that was kind of what we were doing with the style of this movie. Somebody was just telling me at a festival, they were like, normally in a movie you have a little bit of breath where you can step back from it a little bit, but with your movie you can't, because it's really right up in your grill, and I like that. To me, those are the movies that have most affected me. Those things you can't really get around, and you are forced to deal with, whether you like it or not. And sometimes those things make you very mad. Yeah.
Speaking of movies that affected you, now it's it's definitely one of our favorite segments, the now famous Top 5. So, Patrick, if you would be so kind to walk us through your top 5 horror films, and let us know if these are the horror films that influence you, as you said a minute ago, the ones that really get you.
Yeah, actually, I was just having a conversation today with somebody about horror movies and what exactly a horror movie is, and neither of us could really define it. I think that it's probably one of the most undefinable of genres. Yeah. What is a horror movie? I mean, I guess Halloween and Friday the 13th, those are horror movies.
Crossroads with Britney Spears.
But that's the point, things for some people that are...
That's terrifying.
No. Oh. You know what I'm saying? Like, for some people, it's like, oh, well, it's just a human body. It shouldn't be horrible. But for some, they find certain things horrific that aren't for the rest of the world.
No, it's true. Yeah. Sorry, we didn't mean to interrupt there, Patrick. Sorry about that.
But these are the movies that I would call horror, the things that to me and more reflect a real life horror. So my top 5 along those lines are Todd Browning's Freaks.
Yeah.
From 1932, which is much more of a horror movie about sideshow freaks, who I don't want to give too much away about these movies, but I get, Todd Browning was the director of the original Frankenstein and all that, and in this movie he cast actual sideshow freaks, for this movie, which was a sort of a tragic love story of sorts.
I was reading about this because I've never seen it. Believe me, I love, like I said, I love this segment because it gives me a lot of homework. And I've never seen this movie Freaks, but I was just reading on the internet that apparently this movie was banned in a number of states here in the U.S. and apparently was banned in the U.K. as well up until like 1963. When it got like an uncut X rating. So this is like a really heavy movie, right?
Yeah. Because it's depicting and real life carnival sideshow performers who have real deformities, and I think that is the part that makes people more uncomfortable,
right?
Much more so than the narrative of it, which is not that scary per se.
Right. But I mean, considering it was like 1932, like one of my all-time favorite horror movies is Nosferatu, right? And we were just having this conversation a few weeks back, and I was saying I get into people's shoes in that era watching this movie for the first time, and I freak out. I can't even begin to imagine how I would react watching this movie Freaks, considering it's from 1932. Yeah, no, it's really crazy. And what's number? By the way, are these in order or no particular order?
I'm just going. I'll go chronologically.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So what's number 2 on this list?
Number 2 is what was number 2?
Was it Repulsion?
I believe it's Repulsion.
Yeah.
Oh yes, Repulsion. So Repulsion is from 1965. It's by Roman Polanski.
Yeah.
It's a precursor to Rosemary's Baby, which is probably the better known. And it's actually very similar in its plot and whatnot to Excess Flesh. It's a woman played by Catherine Deneuve, who basically becomes sort of by her own sort of in her own way trapped inside of her apartment, and starts to go insane and starts having visions of things, and
which ironically happened to Polanski eventually.
I'm going to make a quick parenthesis in a minute. So I'm going to let you finish because Roman Polanski is quite the character.
Sorry,
but continue.
So she goes insane inside of the apartment, and eventually takes out that insanity on the people who come to visit her there.
I hate to admit it, but I'm not ashamed to admit it. I have not seen this one, but one of my all-time favorite horror movies is Rosemary's Baby. I mean, that movie, honestly, it terrified me. It really, like I said, I read a lot of strange things and strange books, and Rosemary's Baby had a few things in there that I've read in some of these books that I find quite disturbing. But it's just crazy, just kind of the road that Roman Polanski took there with his films. I mean, there was definitely like an underlying theme going on there with Polanski.
But if you've there was a documentary about 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Roman Polanski
haven't watched it, but I heard about
it. I keep mentioning it. We have to watch it because I didn't know this stuff. He went through basically the Second World War, and he went through like heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So the stuff he's coming out with doesn't even surprise me after a while.
That is true. Honestly, I forgot that part. Like I said, I haven't seen it, but you told me a bit about the documentary, and it sounds like it was pretty rough. Patrick, number three. Listen, my brother studied film, and he told me about this movie, and I had no desire to watch it. But I want to hear your take on this because this is pretty heavy. What's number 3 on your list?
This is a Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, which is in the adaptation of the Marquis de Sade's infamous novel that is directed by Pier Paolo Pasolini.
Yeah.
It was the last film that he made before he was murdered. Italian director, Italian film, and basically takes the story and transfers it to fascist Italy, or right after the fall of Mussolini in 1943. And these fascist libertines kidnap 18 teenagers and subject them to different extreme forms of violence, torture, sexual and mental torture over a series of months.
Yeah. No, I'm telling you, my brother told me about this movie, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm sure it's like amazing, but I don't know if at least at the time, I don't know if I was ready to go there. Maybe now
I've read bits of the book.
You were telling me about the book earlier.
I was telling you about the book, and that reading it again.
Because you haven't seen the movie, right?
No, I haven't seen the movie.
Because you were saying, like, I wonder if all the stuff in the book made it to the movie,
some
right?
details in the book, I don't know how they would translate to the screen. I have no idea because they are so, like, how did this guy, like, think of it? I don't know. It's incredible though. Like, it's fascinating.
It's and again, people, you can Google these or go to IMDb and you can look up more information about this. But yeah, like Patrick just said, Pasolini was murdered before the film's release, and it sounds like it's some really heavy stuff. I don't know if I could watch it, but listen, we're only 3 in to your list, and I can already see a pattern, Patrick, but I'm going to let you finish, and why don't you take us to number 4 here?
What's interesting is actually a lot of these films, and the filmmakers who made them, have a lot of myths surrounding their lives, and particularly the making of these movies. The Pasolini, there's still a lot of contention about how and why he was murdered. A lot of people think it was a political plot. The standard sort of thing was that he was murdered by a prostitute that he picked up in the street. But there's just so many, conspiracy theories and stuff surrounding these filmmakers and these movies.
Yeah, and it's almost like it just adds to the mystique of their work at this point, so many years later. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Number 4.
So my number 4 is Come and See, which is normally categorized as a war film. It's from 1985. It's a Soviet film by Elem Klimov, and it's basically about the Nazi occupation of Russia during the war. And I don't think I've seen a movie about that period in time and the Holocaust that's more upsetting than.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So that's number 4.
But yeah, this is another one I haven't seen. But I was reading that apparently the director of this movie planned to have the I believe it was the main actor Alexei Kravchenko hypnotized by a psychotherapist during most of like the really heavy scenes, so that it wouldn't affect his young mind. And I know we were talking about kind of like the lore that surrounds some of these movies, and I think that's a good example of some of the stuff that is said about this movie. I mean, it sounds pretty heavy. All right, Patrick, number 5. This one's interesting. We might have to spend a few minutes on this one. Go ahead, number 5.
Paradise Lost. Actually, I would put all 3 of the movies, but the first one, Paradise Lost and Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills, which is about the West Memphis 3.
Correct.
Original documentary.
What do you make of this whole case? I mean, I watched all the West Memphis 3 movies that came out. It was some pretty scary stuff. I mean, it definitely qualifies in the horror genre. But how did you hear about this case, and what attracted you to it?
Well, I actually, I grew up in Chicago, right? And my father was a criminal defense attorney, and he was involved in a lot of death penalty cases where, Chicago and the state of Illinois had a long and sordid sort of history with, having, generally young men, caged up in prison for, 15 to 20 years for crimes they didn't commit, basically. African-American, Latino men, generally. So he was involved in a lot of these death penalty cases where these people were, on trial or in jail for 15 or 20 years for these crimes which they did not commit. Yeah. And so that's so having that personal sort of connection to that process of things led me to these movies. But I wasn't at all prepared for really what this, because I was kind of, when I was watching these movies, was of the age of these men. I mean, they're slightly older than me, but, this idea of having these alternate ideas, or being these outcasts and this society, and where that can, lead one through rumor and insinuation and, the culture that surrounds you.
It definitely seemed like it was a real life nightmare for these three kids, because they were kids when they were arrested, and they came out as men. They were I think they were well into their 30s, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, it's scary how you can get caught up in something like this and wind up in that position. For me, is definitely a horror movie. Now, when I look at these movies, as a list, a top 5 list, there's definitely something that connects all of them. That they're all very gritty, real life type of horror, and that is what we can see happening in the movie that you're promoting, Excess Flesh. Are these all the movies that you had in mind while making this particular film?
No, I generally, when I, make work or make a movie, I don't really consciously think of any other films, but I definitely think that these works and many others have sort of infused my way of thinking and my interest in movies. So yeah, it's definitely all part of the whole.
Going back to the clipping video, this, as far as we know, also debuted at South by Southwest this year, pretty much alongside your Excess Flesh feature movie. How did you end up doing this, and how did the ideas come together? And okay, a lot of questions here, but we see a lot of similar themes recurring. So where did you start with this video?
Well, I've been buddies with the guys in clipping for many years, and so when they were, putting out this first album through Sub Pop, they asked me to do a video, and it was kind of I could pick which song to do from it, and they kind of directed me. They said, we have this song Body and Blood. It seems it would be up your alley. And of course I listened to it, and it was. And so I sort of developed this idea with the band in a way about what this would be. It started from the visuals and basically this idea of equal opportunity exploitation. And so I was interested in doing an exploitation video about exploitation. And
that's great. Meta exploitation right there.
Yeah. So that's where it sort of developed from, sort of taking the lyrics and taking the sonic world and filtering it through this, particular lens of voyeurism in a way, what that's about.
I'm intrigued. The music video features full-on nudity, and obviously the movie Excess Flesh features a lot of skin. What's the casting process like for projects like this? Are there often awkward moments, or do actors generally take a while warming up to certain ideas? What is it like?
No, I mean, I've had a lot of nudity and the stuff I do. It's just being clear up front about what you're doing and your intentions behind it, and you don't want to trick people. You don't want to trick people into doing this stuff if they're not cool with it. So as long as you're clear up front that this role or whatever involves nudity, and then you can have the conversation with her, because I never like to do it just to do it. But if there's a reason or a purpose behind it, in terms of the thematics or in terms of the story or whatever. So yeah, but it's weird because in that video, I had never met most of the performers until they walked in front of the camera naked.
Oh, wow.
And they're just
how do you do?
By the way, my name
it's nippy in here, isn't it?
But there's this awkwardness and this tension to that actually really added to what I was trying to do there. So that was that worked really well.
as a producer, director, what is it like having to go through the, process and make a decision concerning, whether to include something like nudity or something that a lot of people would find extreme, knowing that it's gonna decrease your audience size? Are you ever going to be the sort of person who says, actually, let's not include this so more people can watch it? It's obviously a difficult decision to make.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody paid me a lot of money to do something, I would probably do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're honest. You're honest. Hey.
If I were being paid like $15 million to direct the Suicide Squad movie,
right.
Yeah.
and they're like, you have to make this PG-13.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like,
all right then.
It's like, what's that, Disney? What? You want me to put mouse ears on the kid? Anything you say. Yeah. No, and honestly, I appreciate you saying that, because that is the reality of the industry. I think that a lot of times, living in LA, we're blessed to know a lot of people, and a lot of people want to do what they love to do, like their dream projects and the stuff that, they're really passionate about. But sometimes you have to do stuff to pay the bills in order to afford to do, what you want to do. And I know, Roman Polanski was one of them. It's even Back to the Future. We were talking about that a couple of weeks ago. Back to the Future, the script was bouncing around for like 5-6 years before that even went near it. Nobody wanted to touch it.
I know.
And the way they went about it was they made a very commercially successful movie first, in order to acquire the credibility, to then be entrusted with a budget to do something that they really love. Yeah. So, like I said, Patrick, I appreciate your candor in that regard, because that is a reality of the industry that I don't think it gets talked about very often.
But no, at the same time, I'm just still intrigued to know, though, what goes through your mind when you make that decision to say, I'm going to include full frontal nudity, I'm going to do these things, and everything, what goes through your head in terms of what will my friends think, what will the public think, what will my parents think, that sort of thing.
Oh, everybody already thinks I'm crazy anyway, so if I didn't have that, then they would think something's wrong.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good place to be.
But yeah, no, I mean, the band was like, they actually wanted it, they wanted something that was going to be an not safe for work video.
That's
and
great.
Of course they come to me to do that.
Wow.
Hey Patrick, you know what to do.
It's like, who can we get to do a really, really twisted Patrick? Patrick, I know that you've been traveling. I mean, you're a busy guy. You're traveling. You're promoting this movie. You're taking it to festivals all around the world. What's the reception been like in other places? I know you just got back from Spain, I believe, or you were in Spain not too long ago.
It was Belgium and then Spain.
So why don't you tell me how did this movie translate over there? Literally, I mean, did you have subtitles made? Did you dub it? And how did people like it?
It's the interesting thing about European festivals and audiences that most of the time is that they show the movies in English or with English subtitles.
Mm-hmm.
It's the great American English imperialist,
Yeah.
So I've gone into a lot of these festivals and they're like, oh no, you don't need to subtitle it. We play everything in English anyways. And I'm like, well, I actually want to get it subtitled. I want
people to understand it.
Yeah, I mean, because there's a lot of particularities to language and these things that I don't think translate necessarily. And I had one or two previous experiences over the summer with festivals where it wasn't subtitled, and people came to me and were like, if this had been subtitled, I think I would have got more out of it. So we subtitled it in all the native languages. Mm-hmm. And overall, with this movie, it's gotten a far greater response from European festivals and audiences than it has in the U.S.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. But I guess it's kind of predictable.
Yeah, understandable.
They're out there, right?
Well, yeah, it's also because we're playing as part of, genre festivals,
okay.
Which they call, encompass there's a federation of fantastic film festivals, the Méliès Foundation, which is in Europe, and it includes a lot of the big, genre festivals in Europe, like Sitges and the one we were at in Spain, Molins de Rey. And these are movie festivals that have science fiction and horror and thrillers and out there. What I found is these kind of festivals are much more inclusive of alternate ideas and more things that don't necessarily translate and play at the Palm Springs International Film Festival or even Sundance or these kind of mainstream American independent film, because there's an idea about it. A lot of film festivals told me they wouldn't even watch the movie because we don't do horror movies. That's what they told me. And I was like, well, it's not a horror movie. They're like, we don't care. It looks like one. We're not even gonna bother with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can imagine that, but people don't want to hear it. As soon as it falls into a genre, that's it. It's slotted in and off they go.
Yeah. How would you describe the movie? Is it more like a suspense thriller than, because you said, you didn't go into this trying to make a horror movie per se, but it just got, locked in to that genre. But in your mind, what kind of movie is Excess Flesh?
I would say it's like a psychological thriller. It's about the horrors of the mind. So it is a horror film in a way, I guess, in that regard. And it's what's been great about playing in horror and genre film festivals is that because it's a kind of a different thing like that, it's actually upset people, much more, who are going into something and anticipating like a, like a torture porn kind of a thing, and that's not at all what this is. And actually, that's more upsetting to them than a woman being kidnapped and systematically tortured for 90 minutes, by some man, which is every other movie I see at these festivals is like that. It's I don't understand. It's like 10 minutes of a woman's fingers, the skin being peeled off of them. I'm like, okay, what is this telling me? I don't know.
It just proves that, you've got pretty good effects. Well done.
No, it's true. It's true.
So anyway, it's the people have been selling this movie as being something quite extreme, but I think the extremity doesn't come in terms of gore or violence or anything like that, but just the way it depicts what it depicts.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question. Presumably, you had a lot of footage by the end of filming. How much do you have to cut out? Were there any major significant scenes that you just, circumstantially had to get rid of?
Oh yeah, I mean, my original cut of the movie was about 40 minutes longer than it is now. There was like a whole other movie in there that was removed. That's always a really hard process. Actually, the process of producing and filming this movie was quite easy. It was the editing process that was the longest and most difficult.
I can imagine. Gosh. We have another question from Prof Madness in the chat. He asks, how did you get the funding for this film? Exciting story.
Did you have to walk up to people in suits and go like, okay, listen, this might take a minute, but this is what the movie's about?
I was really lucky that the producers that I've worked with on this and the executive producer are people I've known for a long time and have worked with on other projects. And so it was a very low budget, very, very low budget movie. And so, they believed in what I was doing and funded that. So it's, I've been lucky, but it's been also through a lot of like hard work to, put forth what I've put forth. So that's how it came out. There's no real like magic formula for getting a movie made. I've discovered, it generally happens by accident. a lot of the time.
Yeah, from what I hear, a lot of the movies that become staples of a particular genre or a generation, you read a bit of the backstory, and yeah, it's there are movies that there was a struggle to get them produced a lot of times. Question, like I said, this movie deals with a lot of heavy themes, and I know that when people watch it, there's going to be things that resonate within them, and more than one thing, I believe. And if you don't mind me intruding in this way with this question, but how much are we seeing of Patrick in this movie? Did you put some of your own fears and phobias and experiences into this movie?
Yeah, I think actually quite a lot, which I didn't recognize until pretty late into making the movie, how personal it was. Because I was saying back when we started the conversation, I generally go into these things with very from a very conceptual sort of place, investigating genre and these particular issues that fascinate me. All these different puzzle pieces come together and form into an image of or a mere reflection of myself in a way. So it's quite personal at the end. So it's harder to deal with this in the real world and knowing that, I think it would have been easier if I had gone into a movie knowing, oh yeah, I'm just, telling a story that's a reflection of something I've experienced before. It would be easier for me to distance myself from it than to get to the end of a process and realize how intensely personal this thing was,
Right. I wonder, as I was watching the trailer and reading about it, these are things that I think we all experience at one point or another, and some more so than others. Patrick, we're almost out of time, but why don't you tell people where they can get more info about the movie, where they can catch it, when they can see it, and all that good stuff, social media, etc.
Yeah, we are being released on VOD and DVD and probably in a number of theaters around the country in March, which I know is a little bit a little ways off. But if you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, it's facebook.com excess flesh movie, I believe, and the Twitter handle is at excess flesh. Let me just excess flesh movie is the Facebook. So if you follow us on there, then you should be getting the updates about when it's gonna be coming out in March. I think it's in the first week in March.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, and so you'll find it up on Amazon, iTunes, all those things, and hopefully in Redbox.
Nice. Well, hey, my birthday falls on the first week of March. Hint for anybody out there. So I know what I'll be doing for my birthday is definitely checking out that movie, Excess Flesh. Patrick, thank you so much for being our guest. You've been great, and we had a lot of fun talking about you, about this film and just horror movies in general, and just learning more about it. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on.
No, thank you
so much.
And have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Wow, that was honestly that was a great interview. I want to thank Patrick again, who great guy, smart guy, talented guy. Definitely go check out this movie, Excess Flesh. I know I will. It's definitely the kind of movie that will make you uncomfortable. And honestly, I feel that art is meant to do that. Art is meant to make you feel uncomfortable and pull you out of that comfort zone. Not to sound redundant. Check out the website for his movie, excessfleshmovie.com, just as you would spell it, all together, excessfleshmovie.com. Follow them on Twitter. That's at excessflesh. He got so lucky that he got all these. Nowadays it's so hard to.
Names. Check out Patrick's website. It's Patrick Kennelly Unmarked, because his, I wouldn't say production company. It produces everything. But yeah, the company's called Unmarked, so patrickkennellyunmarked.com.
Yeah, and don't forget to like them on Facebook. They got a Facebook page, facebook.com/excessfleshmovie. So definitely be on the lookout for that. It's like a very, very interesting film. I look forward to seeing it. I know Genevieve is looking forward to seeing it. So if, follow them, keep tabs, and find out when it's going to be available so that you can check it out and support really, the projects that are
the real indie of this world.
Yeah. Put it this way, George Lucas is not hurting for cash, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that whether it's painting or whatever, or music or movies, we're a big fan of just supporting, like you said, the real independent artists.
Yeah, there's too much indie nowadays, especially in the music scene. That's like indie on a Sony label, and it's like, wait a minute. I mean, I get it; it's a good thing, but still. Yeah,
we're gonna go out with a request because it was a request from the chat room. It was for a How do you say it?
Rammstein.
Yeah, I say Rammstein. Like I totally don't know how to pronounce it.
Ram means to ram something, and Stein is.
Oh, really? Is that? Oh, okay. So it's easier than I thought. Then I can totally speak German now. We're going to go out with one song before we get to the request. And this is one of my favorite songs. As everybody knows, I love the Beatles, and I love this remix of Come Together. And I think it's quite appropriate for the times we're living in. And then we're going to play a little Rammstein because we still like to rock out on this show, darn it. So take care, be safe, God bless. Don't do anything too crazy. Want to see you back next weekend. And do enjoy this one, a little Beatles remix, Come Together, followed by some Rammstein because, well, hey, it's Monday for a lot of you. And we're going to kick Monday in the ass. We're not going to let it get us down. So take care, guys. Be safe. On behalf of Genevieve and myself, we bid you adieu.
And make sure you check out our website for Patrick's top 5 because, oh my goodness, I love top 5 movies.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
It takes away my entire spare time in a whole week.
Take it easy, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
West of the Rockies with Frank the Engineer on the Independent FM, Los Angeles.